something I believe.
All right, I think we can start now.
Yeah, welcome everyone. So hand over to Mehansa.
අවසරයි Swanmansa and everyone attending. So just a recap of what we did last time. We were talking about the Anuruddha Sutra, and we talked about it was about one of Buddha's cousins, Venerable Anuruddha, and Anuruddha Thera was basically thinking about the 7 qualities that a person needs to progress in the path towards nirvana. There was one more quality that the Buddha added on at the end, but the 7 qualities that Venerable Anuruddha was thinking about was alpecha, which was one with few desires or not strong desires, which meant less attachments. Number 2 was santussaka, which meant being content with what you have. So the 4 essentials that we had in our lives: food, shelter, clothes, and medicine. Number 3 was hudakalava, so that was solitude, just being content with being by oneself. Number 4 was virya, so that was just discipline and willpower. Number 5 was sati, which was being mindful. Number 6 was samahita, which meant to be focused or have a concentrated mind. Number 7 was prajnava, which meant to be wise and to see things as they really are. And the 8th quality that the Buddha added on was niprapancha, which means non-proliferation, or just it meant that having no thoughts in your mind, or not generating any thoughts of attachment, and just having no chatter, basically.
Yeah, thank you, Mehansa. I believe you can hear me. And like always, we have Bhikkhunanda Ananda and Susumahita Swamin Wahanse joining us today as well. So welcome them as well, and Avasarai Swamin Wahanse. So today it's our 3rd discussion now, and if you remember, the first one we talked about Samyojana Sutta, and then second one we did Anuruddha Sutta. And so today I thought we'll do a sutta called Vattūpama Sutta. Right? So if you think about why Buddha taught this philosophy, right? So for a person, when they live 70, 80 years as a human, you need some sort of a philosophy to live by, right? Or you need something to live for. And if we don't have one, then we get lost in life, right? Or in other words, if someone is not content with the way their life is going, they begin to think differently, or different to what the society teaches them. Have you guys seen this? You've heard this song, but have you seen the video for this song? It's by Katy Perry. It's a song called Chained to the Rhythm. No one's seen it. Bante, have you seen it? You've heard the song, right? You haven't heard the song. Have you heard the song, Bante? Chained to the Rhythm? Probably not. Okay. So it's about maybe you can watch it afterwards, after the discussion. It's about how people get trapped in or gets chained into this rhythm of samsara, or rhythm of this rat race. And watch the video. It's very, very nice, because it really illustrates how people get trapped or gets trapped by the society into this rat race. And if someone thinks differently, or if someone tries to get out of this rat race, they kick them out of this theme park. So the whole video is inside a theme park named Oblivion. And if someone thinks differently, they get kicked out of the theme park. And yeah, it's a very nice, has a very deep meaning to that song. And it also tells us that there are people in this society who are looking for something beyond what the society teaches them, right? And a lot of the time people sort of get lost there or stop there because they don't know where to look for or what to look for. And what the Buddha taught us is how to liberate ourselves from this not just society, but being a slave to this mind of ours, right? And that's why Buddha created this sub community called the Sangha or Sasana within this bigger community, so that people can freely, without any troubles, search for the truth that they're looking for. And so Buddha in his teachings explains to us about the mind, right? And we all have discussed about this quite a lot. And Buddha explains how the thoughts and the beliefs that we have and how they impact our general life. So the sutta I chose today, like I said, is the Vattūpama Sutta, and it's in the Majjhima Nikaya. It's the 7th sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. So if you remember, we have the Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, and then Kuddaka Nikaya. So Majjhima Nikaya is the middle length discourses, and this is the 7th sutta. So
Recording in progress.
Relative to the other suttas that we've been discussing, this is a slightly longer sutta, but I think we should be able to get through it, right? So let's go to the sutta, and sutta starts off in the same way that suttas normally starts. Evam me sutang ekam samayam bhagava savatyam viharati jetavane anatapindika sarame tatrako bhagava bhikkhu amantesi bhikkhuvoti badanterite bhikkhu bhagavato pachassosum bhagava etaduvocha. So Buddha was at the times living at Savatthi and in the Jetavana monastery, and he calls the monks and gives this Dhamma talk. So Buddha starts off with a simile, right? So the name of this sutta is Vattūpama, or Vatta means a cloth, and Upama means simile. So simile of the cloth is the translation to the name of this sutta. And Buddha starts with the simile, telling us to imagine that there's a dirty cloth, and obviously has stains, and a person tries to or wants to change the color of the cloth or put dye into the cloth. And what happens is, because there's stains and it's not clean, whatever the dye that person puts on, whether it's blue, gold or red, there's going to be stains there in the cloth, right? The stains are going to be visible even after dyeing. So it's not going to be properly dyed, right? So in this simile, the cloth is our mind, right? And Buddha says, if our mind is dirty or it has stains, or if our mind is impure or unpleasant, Buddha says that person not only is it breaking. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, all good. So Buddha says our mind, if it's impure or unpleasant, then what happens is that person's afterlife or the future will also be unpleasant. And then Buddha talks about the other side. So if a person's mind is pure or is pleasant, then that person's future is also pure and becomes pleasant. And then Buddha explains how our mind becomes impure, right? And gives a long list of what we call defilements, right? And starting off with desires. So it's not normal desires, Buddha says it's like a intense or excessive desire for the things that we have. And the second is desire for the things that others have. So sometimes people like the things that they own, but going beyond that, people sometimes like the things that other people have, and they begin to want that. So Buddha says these two things make our mind impure. And then the third one is anger, right? So I'm going to use a simile here, or use an analogy. Let's think of sometimes when you're driving and someone cuts in front of you and you get angry, makes you angry. And so this is the third quality. And then the next quality is what we call krodha, or in other words, this is the next stage from anger, right? So initially the person cuts us off and we get angry, and that's it. But then if we hold it in, if we hold that anger in, or let's say, when that person cuts us off, he scrapes our car, and then we talk to them and they say, no, it's our fault that they crashed into our car. So now it's not the same anger, right? It has escalated now, has gone into the next stage, which we call krodha. And so we don't call that vyapada anymore, it's called krodha, right? And then the next one, or the next stage from there, is what we call baddha vaira. So this one is, so in that incident, when we take the information and we call the insurance, we get it settled, we don't remember that person anymore, right? We move on. But sometimes, let's say a person that we like or someone that we are really close with does or say something to us that is very rude and makes us very angry. Now it's slightly different to the previous case, right? We tend to remember this person, this incident for a while. So Buddha says this. This is another quality or defilement that makes our mind impure. So there's a story, or in one of the suttas, Buddha says sometimes people's anger is like a line drawn in water. It disappears straight away, right? And in other people's, it's like a line drawn in sand, drawn on sand. It's there for a little bit longer. And sometimes for some people it's like carved in stone, right? They don't forget it. So then these are the three stages of anger, and Buddha says these three are also certain things that make our mind impure. And if you think about this, right, let's talk about this, because you've been practicing for a while now, we can talk about these things. The anger, and I remember one of you guys actually asked this on the first day that we had our program as well, about anger. The anger and the desires. So these are the first two things that Buddha talked about here. These two things, they work together. Okay, what I mean by that is, if a person has a lot of desires, or if he wants things to happen a certain way, and when they don't happen that way, they get angry, right? Or in other words, they get angry because they can't have the things that they want, right? So our desires and our anger, they work together. And in this path, Buddha, I think I sort of briefly talked about it earlier on another day. Buddha has split this path into 4 stages. And when anger and the desires are eliminated, they get eliminated together. Anger and desire both go away at the same time. So they work together, right? And this is, so when we have these discussions, right, when we have these sutta discussions, we can talk about these things openly and honestly, right? And that's the importance of this. So for example, your friends, on a Monday night, they might be sleeping in or something. After work, they're tired, they go straight to bed. But when we have a discussion like this, we can learn about our own mind, right? The talk has explained how our mind works, and it's for our benefit as well. And the next qualities or the defilements that Buddha talks about, they're very subtle, and sometimes we might not even realize that we have these things. So for example, the next one is contentment, or not appreciating others' qualities, or putting other people down. For example, let's say there's a person who is a very generous person, and rather than appreciating and acknowledging their qualities, we put them down and we try to hide their qualities. So that's another thing that impures our mind, as an impurity for our mind. And then the next one is competing with each other, or rivalry, right? So we sometimes, okay, this person got this, I should take it as well, or trying to compete with them. That's another one. And then the next one is jealousy. The next one is greed, and before we talked about desires, right? This one is greed. So desires is wanting things, and greed is not sharing the things that we have, right? So the first one was desires, and now it's greed. And some of these things, they are very sort of connected and very subtle, and there's slight differences, sometimes hard to notice. And the next one is slightly interesting one. It's showing the qualities that you don't have. Right? So for example, let's say you get angry on the inside, but you're not a generous person, but you pretend to be generous. That sort of things. So you're lying, or you're showing being someone who you're not. That's the next one. It's called Maya. And the next one is kapati, meaning tricking others or lying to others, fraud, that sort of thing. And the next one is interesting. It's stubbornness. So this one means you have very rigid ideas in your mind. You're not willing to change your mind. You're not willing to listen to others. You're not flexible with your ideas. And this one, we talked on the first day when we talked about the Sangyojana Sutta, how people sometimes, if they're not willing to listen to, if they're not open-minded enough, they might miss out on hearing the Dhamma, right? Do you guys remember the story about the king who left his kingdom and went to listen to the Dhamma, right? And he meets a devil, right? And then the next defilement is conceit, or trying to be better than others. So before he was competing with others, this one is trying to be better than others. The next two are slightly related. It's the ego, mane, and adimane. So ego is, you can think of it as arrogance, and then we have vanity afterwards. So again, this connects with the stubbornness, right? The reason that we have rigid ideas, or the reason that we are not willing to change our perspective, change our ideas, change our mind, we're not willing to listen to others because of our ego, right? Because we think that, okay, I'm right. Right? Because of that ego or arrogance, we miss out on a lot of things, like especially listening to the Dhamma or hearing the Dhamma. And the next two are again related, madhe and pramadya. So madhe here, it's you can think of it as being high, right? But not on drugs. But let's say, for example, a young person might think, okay, I'm young, and they might get it into their head. Or someone who is very fit might take it inside and create an ego out of it. So that's the madhe. And pramade is negligence, or not giving your spiritual life a priority, or making your spiritual life a priority. Right? And all of these things, defilements, Buddha says that we need to eliminate. And there's different ways that we talk about, right? All these things can be concisely or compacted into three, raga, desha, moha. Right? But here Buddha goes into a bit more detail. And does anyone have any questions at this moment before we go to the next part? All right. So then Buddha says, when someone understands that these defilements, or understand that these kelis, they harm us and they destroy our peace, and also peace in the future, they start to be mindful and practice and try to eliminate these things. And once this happens, once he has eliminated these things, Buddha says he develops faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. So notice this, right? So if you remember, we talked about this other sutta called Chula Hattipadobhum Sutta, about the simile of the footprint of the elephant, right? And this links with that, because in that sutta, Buddha talks about how you need to verify something before you actually start to believe in it or trust it. So here as well, Buddha says, once they practice and eliminate this, then they develop the faith in Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. So the faith is it's not a blind faith, right? It's not something that is created by listening to someone, or because their parents are telling them to follow it or anything, right? It's after their practice that they realize, okay, this really does create peace within me. Then they develop faith about the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. And that faith is also unshakable. And also, notice how when we when we talk about the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, we say those gathas are Itipiso Bhagava Arahan Samma Sambuddho, Soakkato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko, Supadipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangha. So in these gathas, right, except for the Sangha, the Dhamma and the Buddha, we talk about the qualities, right? So especially in the Buddha's verse, we don't talk about the physical qualities of the Buddha, right? We talk about the mental qualities that he had. Right? There's another gatha that talks about the physical qualities of the Buddha, but we don't say that. We talk about the mental qualities, right? Arahan Samma Sambuddha Vijjachana Sampanna Sukhato Lokavidu. And we've talked about the qualities of the Dhamma in our program, right? So except for one, I think. So if you remember the qualities of the Dhamma, we have Swakkata. It's the teaching by the Buddha is complete. There's no parts missing or anything. Swakkata, and then Sandittika. You get the results in this life itself. Akalika, you can't restrict the Buddha's teaching to a time frame. Right, so for example, the people 2,500 years ago, their mind worked the same way that our mind works, right? The data in our minds are different because they didn't have cars or computers back then, so they don't know about computers. But the way their mind works and the way our mind works is exactly the same. Akalika Ehipassika means you can come and look. There's nothing to hide here. Opanayika, you apply this or practice the teaching by applying to yourself, or you see the piece by yourself. Pacchattam Vettabbo Vinyohi. This is the one that we didn't talk about, and this means a person understands the Dhamma according to their wisdom. So depending on how wise they are, they can understand the teaching by the Buddha. So what I mean by that is, when Buddha gives a teaching or a Dhamma talk, certain people become fully enlightened. Certain people become, they start the path, they become partially enlightened. Or some people, they might, blame the Buddha and go, leave that place angrily, right? And that depends on the wisdom of each person. To what extent we understand the Buddha's teaching. So, and there's also this other sutta where a person asks the Buddha, Kinsu the vittam purisasa settan, kinsu suchinno sukhamava hati. What is the greatest asset for a person, and by doing what brings peace to that person? Right? Can I ask you, what do you think is the greatest asset for a person? Or greatest thing a person can have in their life? Any guesses? What's the greatest thing in your life?
Ability to think.
Ability to think, okay.
I was going to say something about your mind and developing it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's good. Any others?
I'd say money is pretty valuable.
Money is, yeah. No, that's good. So someone asks, this is in the Alavaka Sutta. So, Kinsu the Vittam Purisasa Settam, what is the greatest asset or greatest thing for a person? And Buddha says, Saddhi the Vittam Purisasa Settam. Having faith is the greatest thing a person can have. Right? So let's think about that, right? So for example, we decided that we're going to have this discussion at 8:30 on Monday. And if we didn't believe or trust each other to be here, then what happens? We won't be here, right? Or let's say you go to work tomorrow morning with the belief or trusting that your manager will pay you, right? But if you have doubt that they're not going to pay you, then what happens? Becomes suspicious, right? You think twice about going to work, right? So in our day-to-day life, for everything that we do, we need faith, right? Not just in other people, but also in ourselves, right? So that's why Buddha says, Saddhida Vittam Purisasa Settam. So even in this practice, in the beginning, so in the first few, those programs that we have, mindfulness programs, I didn't talk about faith at all. I told you to practice and see what happens, right? And you get to a stage where once you have done that, you get to a stage where you need that faith to jump over that hurdle, right? And that's when faith comes in. So first you have to develop your wisdom, and then later you have to balance it out with faith. If you have too much faith, then it becomes blind faith. You begin to believe in things that without questioning them. And if you have too much wisdom, you keep questioning and not practicing. So you have to balance these two out, faith and wisdom. And then the second question this person asks the Buddha is Kinsu suci no sukhamavahati. And Buddha says, so that means Kinsu suci no sukhamavahati means by doing what brings peace to a person's life. Buddha says, Dhammo suci no sukhamavahati. Practicing the Dhamma brings peace to a person. Right? Practicing the Dhamma or mindfulness brings peace to a person's life. And there's a Dhammapada which says, Diga jaga rato rati, digan santasa yojanan, digo bala anan sansaro saddhammang avijana. What this gatha means is, it's a very interesting, very nice gatha, one of my favorite Dhammapada. It means for a person who is not sleeping, or for a person who is staying up, the night is long. Right? So for a person who is not sleeping, the night is long. For a person who is walking, a mile is long. Right? And for someone who doesn't know the Dhamma, their sansara is long. Right? For them to get peace, it takes a while. And why is that? Because we've talked about how they think that someone who doesn't know the Dhamma, someone who hasn't heard the Dhamma, they think that the things that they see, hear and feel, taste, these things are really there, these things are real. They don't realize that they're interpretations of themselves, of themselves, right? They think that the external things have a value. So for example, they buy a new car and they think that this car is valuable. They don't realize that the value is given by himself. Right? And so a person who hasn't heard the Dhamma, they go looking for these external things. They look for contentment, happiness externally. And they go around doing this for all their life and they die. Right? If they train their mind becomes quiet, right? And peaceful. Right? And that's why the Buddha says someone who practices the Dhamma, their mind becomes peaceful. Dhammo sucino sukhamavahati. So let's go back to the sutta that we are talking about, Vattūpama sutta. So this person who practices and sees the cessation of these defilements that we discussed earlier, he develops faith. Right? And a person who is not listening to the Dhamma, who has not heard the Dhamma, they probably wouldn't even realize that these things are defilements. Right? And for those people, they want these defilements. They don't want to get rid of them. Right? Because if you get rid of them, they think that they lose their life. Right? Because their whole life is developed with these defilements. Right? They've created this illusion in their mind with these defilements. So Buddha explains something nicely next, right? So Buddha says, with this faith, he develops concentration in the mind. Right? So concentration comes with this, with the cessation of these defilements. So when someone's mind is free from these defilements, their mind gets into concentration. And if the mind is noisy or is with these defilements, they can't develop the concentration. And then Buddha says, with this virtue, concentration and wisdom, just like a dirty cloth can be cleaned using water, right? A dirty cloth can be cleaned using water. A person who has virtue, concentration and wisdom, in Sutta it says, they can eat anything and that's not going to become an obstacle to their path. Right? Or in other words, they don't have to restrain themselves because they've mastered the mind. They've quieted the mind. They are no longer slave to their mind. Right? So this part is interesting, right? Because here, the reason that Buddha talks about virtue or sila in his teaching is to quieten the mind. right, is because it helps us quieten the mind. And that's to an extent, right? By observing the precepts or by having the sila itself, it doesn't eliminate these defilements that we talked about. You need to practice mindfulness in order to get rid of the defilements. The sila is there because it helps quieten the mind to an extent. Right? So let me ask you a question. Let's say if a person has gotten rid of these defilements, do they still observe the sila? So remember, Buddha talks about the sila to quieten the mind, right? And if someone has quietened the mind already, do they have a sila to observe? I see some nods. You don't want to... Yes, no? So, the reason that we have to protect the sila or observe the sila is because we break it. Right? So, let's say if a person does something bad or something, and then their mind tells them to lie to others. Their mind forces them to, or persuades them to say that, tell others that you didn't do it. Right? But when someone has practiced mindfulness, when someone has gotten rid of that ego that they have, they no longer have a need to protect the sila, because their mind, their mind doesn't tell them to lie or to kill or whatever. Their mind doesn't, they're not a slave to their mind anymore, right? So the sila, in other words, is automatically protected, right? There's no need for them to, okay, I'm going to protect the sila, observe the sila now. There's no need to do that. The sila is automatically protected, is observed. So the sila that Buddha talks about in his philosophy is something that gets observed automatically. Right? And that comes with understanding the philosophy and practicing. Right? And think about how beautiful this is, right? So everyone, I think, if they have not been enlightened, if they're not enlightened, they've done something that they regret in their life. Right? It's happened to everyone. Or something has happened that gets rid of their peace and puts them in a state of sorrow. Right? Something has happened in everyone's life. But now Buddha says, if someone can practice mindfulness, even for even observing just one thought, right, and observing it arising and ceasing, arising any of these defilements and cessation of these things, then Buddha says this person can be enlightened. Right? So it gives the person a second chance. Right? It doesn't matter how bad a thing you've done. Buddha forgives them. Buddha says this person can also be enlightened. And when we read the biographies of these enlightened people at the Buddha's time, before they were enlightened, most of them, they were not good people. Some had killed people, right? Some were liars. Right? They had all these defilements that we talked about earlier. Right? And these people went on to be enlightened because they were able to move on and practice mindfulness, right? So Buddha says that just like that dirty cloth becoming clean, this person who keeps practicing, they're able to get rid of these defilements and liberate themselves, right? And you might think that, okay, this is very hard and hard to do and can't do it or something, right? But that's again your mind. That's your mindset, right? It's depend on how you see it. And there's this thing that happened in mid 1950s, right? Before 1954, I think it was. There was a belief amongst humans that humans cannot run a mile. That's about 1.6 kilometers. People believe that humans cannot run a mile under 4 minutes. This was a belief that people had. Not just any people, it's, doctors, the trainers, the athletes themselves. they all believed that we cannot break this 4-minute barrier. And people had tried different experiments to disprove this, right? So for example, they had put a person inside a stadium and put a lion and make the person run for his life, and to see if he can break this barrier of 4 minutes. And even then they couldn't break this barrier, unfortunately, for that person. And then so this opinion or this belief was known worldwide, and people believed it so much that in the 1940s, someone ran it in just over 4 minutes. So 4 minutes and 1 second or something like that. And then everyone said, okay, this is the record that's going to be there forever. No one's going to break this record. And that record and that opinion went around the world, and people believed that. And that record stood for 9 years. No one was able to break that record. And then in 1954, this British runner named Roger Bannister, he broke the 4-minute barrier, right? And this was in 1954. So the previous record was there for 9 years, and this person broke this barrier. Not just a barrier, that right? It was the belief. He disproved this belief that was there for as long as humans existed. And within the next year, I think it was 5 or 6 others also broke this barrier. Right? The previous record stood for 9 years and nobody was able to break it. As soon as someone broke this 4-minute barrier, 5 or 6 others broke it within the next year. And there weren't any scientific breakthroughs, or people weren't genetically modified or anything like that, right? It was purely the mindset. When one person did it, everyone else knew that they could do it. Right? Or in other words, when we are a slave to our mind, we can't use our body to our potential. Right? We get so trapped into our the mind, the way our mind works, to these ideas that the mind has, and we begin to believe them. We don't know what's true and what's not, because we think that what we have in our mind is true. Right? And so that's why, and I think now the record is like 3 minutes 45 seconds or something like that. And most Olympic runners, I think, break this barrier now. Right? So it's becomes something very simple example, right, where it shows how our mind is how our mind impacts our life. Right? And at the end of this sutta, there was a person, Sundarika, who listened to this Dhamma talk, and he wasn't happy. He wasn't happy with this Dhamma talk. He didn't understand it. And then Buddha explains to him differently, the same teaching differently. And by listening to the second version, he understands it, and he ordains, and he then becomes enlightened later on. So again, that it shows how that quality of the Dhamma, right? Paccattametta bhuviññahiti. A person listening to the same Dhamma talk, he wasn't happy, but then he listens to a different Dhamma talk, he was able to understand. And this is again shows a quality that Buddha has. We call it Indriya Paropariyata Jnana, which means Buddha is able to, when he meets a person, understand how much faith, how much wisdom, how much willpower, how much mindfulness, and how much concentration each person has. So each of us has different levels of these qualities, and Buddha is able to understand it. And no matter who becomes enlightened after the Buddha, only another Buddha can have that knowledge or that jnana, right? An arahant doesn't have that jnana. So in other words, we don't have the privilege to meet a Buddha to see which quality has developed within us, right? So for us, it's important that we put in effort and really practice mindfulness in order to get results, right? Because back then people had Buddha and they could meet the Buddha. For example, this person, Sundarika, he was able to see meet the Buddha and listen to the Dhamma in a different way. But we don't have that privilege. So we need to spend, I guess, more time or practicing and listening to the Dhamma. So that's the sutta. You don't have any questions or want to add on something? Maybe the Bhantes?
I had one question
Yeah.
about one of the defilements that you were speaking about. The one where you said like you think something or you feel something, except you portray like a different thing, like externally. Could you explain that one a bit more?
Yeah. Okay. So that was more for someone who doesn't listen to the Dhamma versus a person who listens to the Dhamma, right? Comparing those two. So person, what the Buddha teaches is Manopubangama Dhamma, right? How our mind is at the forefront, is the control center. So when something comes through our senses, we give it a meaning, right? We give it a value, right? And I'll use that example of the car because it's easy to understand. It's relatable. Does the car know its value? Like, let's say you have a car, and does the car know that it's valued this much? It doesn't, right?
No.
Then who gives the value?
The people that want to buy it.
The people, yeah.
Or
And
us.
then and let's say you buy the car, and you think that, okay, this is valuable, this is my car, etc. For another person, does he feel the same way about your car? No, right? No. So can you understand how we are living in our own world created by ourselves?
Yeah.
That's what I was saying. Right? We give these.
I think I was talking about something. I think I was talking about something else, like something mentioned before that, where I think the exact context you said it in was like someone that's not actually generous inside, they would portray themselves as
Yeah. Oh, right, that one. Yeah. Okay, so that was okay. Maya. So you're pretending to be someone who you're not. Right. So for example, let's say, let me try to think. It's something like.
I guess my question specifically for that one is, let's say like we'll take anger as an example, right? You're like not naturally just an angry person on the inside, right? But then you're like you've I guess done enough mindfulness where you can, I guess, control that, and you don't show that out to the world, and you instead you're able to control those emotions, so you portray yourself as someone that's calm. Does that fall under that?
No.
I guess defilement.
No. It's more like let's say you are. I can't think of an example. Nothing's coming to my mind. But what you said, it's not that, right? When we practice mindfulness, the anger, we're not controlling the anger. Anger just doesn't arise. Anger is not there. So it's not that. So let's say, for example, right? Let's say you go to a party and you pretend to be, let's say you think you have this idea that, okay, I'm smart and I'm smarter than these people or whatever. You have this idea and you go there and you pretend to be smart or something, right? But in reality, let's say it's not a smart person or something like that. Like you're pretending to be someone you're not. It's not necessarily related to your emotions, right? Emotions, you have to be honest. Yeah. Bante, maybe Sunandanand Swami has a better example. I can't. Nothing's coming to my mind.
I think it's depend on the motivation that we have, like when we want to subside anger. it's maybe because we feel shy or we want to show others that we are not angry driven person. I'm not angry driven person. But when someone practice mindfulness, he want to stop anger not because of others judging me like that. That may be one reason, but you see the bad outcome of anger, and then that bad outcome. There are so many negative outcomes of anger, so that is why. I mean, that is purely the motivation behind why you want to stop the anger. So
Okay.
yeah,
So
does it
for
answer
this
your
one, I
question?
guess. Yeah, I guess. So I guess this defilement is more so around like making other people believe something that's not true. So it's kind of like lying in a way.
Yeah, when come to practice, this opening up is very important. If you try to hide, it's become very difficult, to the practice. Like you want to show off, you want to hide your defilements, then it's very difficult to, practice. You can always show off, hide the negative things that you have. You do not open it up. Then it's very difficult. So even Buddha times, those who many people, they came and meet Buddha and listened to Dhamma, they became enlightened, but they had a lot of bad qualities, but this one quality they did not have, this pretending to be a good person. If they had bad qualities, they just open up. So they never lie. This lying, if someone lying, it's very difficult to go through. So this is something very important quality, opening up. So in mindfulness, you open up to yourself. That is one thing. You accept yourself, and you can also open up to others. So this is the one major quality. Someone who come to extreme entry, becomes Sotapanna, he has this quality. He cannot hide. Yeah.
Okay.
Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it does. Definitely.
So sorry. So the example I can get like the exact point of the Maya. Maya means exactly you're trying to pretend someone who you are not. You can see this example very commonly in politics. Like if you think about someone who is very generous and giving money and all these donation and things like that, but they are actually stealing common people money in another way, in a hidden way. So that is an example of a Maya. Is that correct, Bante? Is that the proper sort of an example? Like, who is a stealer actually trying to showing in the society as a generous person
As a good
who is
person.
doing donations?
Yeah. So if you remember that Theragata that I mentioned a while ago, Napare Vachana Choro, Napare Vachana Muni. Others might call you a thief or a saint, but it's you who knows, right? In this path, you're dealing with yourself, your mind. So if you're not open and honest in this practice, you can't progress, right? So that's and the reason that people hide, or this reason that people they don't open up, is because of the ego, right? They're trying to protect themselves or protect their dignity or something like that they have within them, and they're not willing to destroy it, right? So in other words, they want to be enlightened, but they also want their life, right? They also want their family, the job, the degrees, and the education qualifications, the wealth, everything. They also want those, but they also want enlightenment, right? Initially, you can to an extent balance it out, but yeah, because you guys you practice seriously, I can share this, but you get to a stage where you have to choose one or the other. But when you get to that stage though, your mind is very quiet, you can live a happy lay life, no problems, right? So don't worry, okay? You don't have to be monks to practice this. You can practice this as a layperson, and there's examples in the suttas where people have done that, right?
I guess I have a question. So there are some of the things that were said that you can be
Very.
sorry, you can be intentional and not actually do those stuff, but some things you can't control. So even if you are mindful, like it's like, let's say you become angry, you're gonna become angry, but you can't control it. So like, how do you intentionally stop it?
No, we're not trying to intentionally stop it, right? What I mean by elimination is when you know you're going to be angry, notice that. When you're angry, notice it. Know that you're angry. That's all. And when you know that, at some point it goes away, right? As soon as you notice it, it goes away. When you become mindful, it goes away, and then it starts again. It's not a continuous anger that stays there. We think it's continuous because of the speed of it, but in reality it goes in pulses, right? And because our mindfulness is not sharp enough, we think that it's a continuous anger that's there for days and hours and days. So yeah, we're not trying to control the mind, we're trying to understand the mind, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Because our mind and our body, it's not ours, right? For us to control something, it should belong to us. If it doesn't belong to us, then how can we control it, right? And it's the same with the mind. So what happens in this practice is you let your mind be and you get out of it, you liberate yourself. That's another way to put it. Also, I wanted to ask, so Mehansa, you started this sutta discussion, right? And I wanted to know, like, what did you want out of the sutta discussions? Are you getting what you wanted, or did you have something different in your mind? Are these suttas okay, or?
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good.
Okay.
No, because we can, if you like, there are suttas where we can sort of learn about the history or the background that Buddha lived in certain suttas, or there are suttas where Buddha talks about living a successful lay life, right? Or there are suttas where Buddha talks about the philosophy like this. Or we can get look at some more theoretical suttas as well if you want, right? But at the end of the day, it's a practice, right? It's not about learning all these suttas or anything, right? If you can't apply it to yourself, then there's no point having all this knowledge in your head and not being able to apply it to bringing peace to yourself.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, this was what I was thinking of.
Okay.
If anyone else,
Yeah, anyone else want to add?
Sorry, I would like to add something regarding this anger. I think Venerable Asankata explained it based on his personal experience. But for me, if just by knowing the anger, when I'm angry, this is my personal situation. When I'm angry, just by knowing I cannot stop anger sometimes. I think Asankata knows it. Unless if it's start to how to say burn within. Just by knowing it, it does not go away. So what I usually do is I just directly talk to that person. What really happened? No, otherwise, mind is start to, make a big story out of maybe something simple has happened. So that is what I usually do. So in my personal experience, just by knowing it doesn't go away mostly. Yeah.
How do you then deal with, because I'm similar, like I need to tell that person or talk to that person, but there's no guarantee that that person is going to understand or listen or make a difference.
Oh, so you asking me, is it? It's depend on how you talk to the person. If you talk with the fact, then mostly they listen. Like, rather than showing the emotions, if you can talk dependent on the fact, why did you do like that or something like that, then mostly it works. So far in my life, that has never happened. Someone came back to me, you know, making the situation worse. I don't know. Maybe I know the art. I just always talk with the fact. Yeah. I remember once I fight with Asankat also. I expect to set up the mics in our meditation hall, and he did not set up it on time. So I just I think Asankata was in with Jnana Kusala Bhante. So I called him. I just asked him why you didn't do that. Why you have something problem with me, personal problem or something. But actually, when I talked to him, he was very busy, and he wanted to I think he was very tired, looking at so many things, taking care of so many things. So I think he wanted to take a rest. So he escaped. The most far kuti is Jnana Kusala Bhante's kuti. So that's what I thought. I mean, after I talked to him. So this kind of thing happen. We sometimes we fight, and monk life also not like you live in the heaven. You have this kind of problem. So it
Yeah, and a lot of the times those are like misunderstandings, right? We think that this person did this because they're angry at us, but in reality, we don't know what their life is about, right? We don't know what they're going through, and that was a good example because I was somewhere else. I was doing something else, and Bante thought that I didn't do it on purpose, right? So when we discuss these things or when we talk with that person, that it makes it easier to deal with that conflict.
I guess the way I thought it is like, no matter what someone else does, like the anger is a me problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then because I think for so long I've been relying on like, okay, I'm angry at this person, let me tell this person, and then this person can basically, like, their response will solve the anger. But I feel like, sometimes in society, maybe not everyone can receive that.
No, that's true. And when you talk with that person, it will make it easier to solve the problem, right? But it won't get rid of the anger within you, right? That's different, right? Even if you're enlightened, people might have problems with you, right? Even then you have to talk with them and deal with those situations like that, because that's a different story, right? That's with the community, and then we need to live according to the to that, right? But in terms of anger that is within you, that is a you problem. All right. So, any more questions? If not, we can stop.
Thank you, Vantes, for all your time and taking time out to talk to us. And Teruan Sarnai.
Okay, Teruvan Sarnai.